The movie opens on Omri's ninth birthday. Unlike modern kids' movies that start with high energy, this feels grounded and suburban. Omri receives several gifts, but the two most important ones seem like junk at first. The cupboard. His brother Gillen gives him an old white metal wall cupboard he found in the street. The little man. His best friend Patrick gives him a small, second-hand plastic figurine of an Iroquois warrior, the Indian. The key. His mother gives him an ornate skeleton key from her collection that happens to fit the cupboard's lock perfectly. That night, Omri feels a connection to the cupboard. He places the plastic Indian inside, locks it with the special key, and goes to bed. The sound. In the middle of the night, he is woken up by a strange scratching and tapping coming from inside the metal box. The reveal. When he opens the door, the plastic toy is gone. In its place is a tiny, living, breathing man, only 3 inches tall. This is Little Bear. The reaction. This is a key moment for your video. Omri isn't just scared, he's in awe. However, Little Bear is terrified. He sees Omri as a great spirit or a giant and pulls out a tiny real knife to defend himself. This is where the movie differentiates itself from typical magic films. Omri realizes this isn't a toy, it's a person with needs. Communication. We learn that Little Bear speaks some English, learned from French traders in his own time, the 1760s. The injury. In the confusion, Little Bear gets a small scratch. Omri realizes that even a tiny scratch for a tiny man is a serious wound. Omri tries to touch him, but Little Bear barks at him to stay back. This establishes the power dynamic. Omri has the physical power, but Little Bear has the moral authority and dignity. Omri wants to know if it was a fluke. He takes a plastic World War I medic figurine and puts it in the cupboard to see if it also comes to life. It works. A tiny, shell-shocked British medic named Tommy appears. This is a pivotal scene for an American audience to analyze. Tommy is traumatized by the Great War, and Omri has to use him to heal Little Bear's wound. This introduces the concept that the cupboard doesn't just create life, it plucks real people out of history. Now that the WWI medic Tommy has treated Little Bear's wound, Omri has to hide the magic from his family. A secret. Omri's brothers and parents are all around, creating a high-tension atmosphere. For an American audience, highlight the Amblin-style feel here, the classic trope of a kid keeping a massive secret from oblivious adults. Feeding a warrior. Omri realizes he can't feed Little Bear plastic food. He sneaks real food from the kitchen. There's a classic shot where Omri gives Little Bear a single corn kernel and a tiny drop of water. To us, it's a snack. To Little Bear, it's a full meal. This visual storytelling is perfect for an explainer video. This is the bonding phase, where the two characters start to understand each other's worlds. Little Bear refuses to live in a white metal box, the cupboard. He wants a proper home. He asks Omri for wood and bark to build a longhouse, traditional Iroquois housing. Little Bear is confused by modern technology. He sees Omri's room as a land of giants. Omri has to find tiny tools. He looks through his craft supplies to find things that could work as building materials, showing his dedication to making Little Bear comfortable rather than just treating him like a pet. The movie introduces the first real threats to Little Bear's life, which are everyday objects to us. Omri's pet cat becomes a terrifying monster in this sequence. This is a classic suspense beat. Even a house cat is a saber-toothed tiger to a 3-inch man. Omri momentarily forgets how fragile Little Bear is. He tries to pick him up or move him too quickly, and Little Bear asserts his dignity, reminding Omri that he is a chieftain and a warrior, not a toy. The secret becomes too big for Omri to keep alone. The arrival of Patrick. Omri's best friend Patrick comes over. Patrick is the wild card in the story. While Omri feels a sense of responsibility and protection, Patrick represents the selfish human urge to play with the magic. Omri is hesitant to show Patrick, but eventually he can't resist. This sets up the main conflict for the rest of the movie. What happens when the magic is used for fun instead of out of respect? This is a high-drama sequence. Patrick is obsessed with the idea of bringing more toys to life. Patrick wants to see the magic for himself. Omri is protective, but eventually he gives in. Patrick chooses a cowboy figurine, Boone, This is a brilliant directorial choice. You have an 18th century Iroquois, Little Bear, and now a 19th century American cowboy, Boone. In American history, these two groups were often enemies. The movie uses this to create immediate conflict. Boone is terrified and starts firing his now real tiny gun, while Little Bear treats him like a mortal enemy. To keep the secret, Omri has to take the cupboard and the tiny men to school. This is the classic don't get caught trope that American audiences love. Every bump in his backpack is a life or death situation for Little Bear and Boone. Omri tries to feed them under the table. This scene highlights the vulnerability of the characters. While Omri is worried about a math test, Little Bear and Boone are literally fighting for survival in a backpack. While trapped in the bag or the cupboard together, the two tiny men are forced to interact. Boone is the emotional one. He's a sensitive cowboy who cries easily, earning him the nickname Pipsqueak. Little Bear is stoic and brave. The movie starts showing that despite their historical differences, they are both just scared, displaced people. For your video, mention that this represents reconciliation. It's a message that even the most bitter enemies can find common ground when they are small in a big world. This is the midpoint disaster. The incident, through a series of accidents, often involving Omri's brothers or his own clumsiness, the magic key is lost. The panic. Without the key, the cupboard is just a metal box. Omri can't bring anyone else to life, but more importantly, he can't send them back. The cliffhanger, the realization hits that Little Bear and Boone might be trapped in the 20th century forever. Omri is at school, and the tension is at an all-time high. The living backpack. While Omri is in class, Little Bear and Boone the cowboy are stuck inside his bag. They aren't getting along. Little Bear is a proud warrior, and Boone is a loud-mouthed, frightened cowboy. They start arguing and fighting inside the bag. Omri has to desperately cover the sounds by coughing or making noise so his teacher and classmates don't hear the tiny voices. For your American audience, point out the suspense. This is a classic hidden in plain sight trope that keeps viewers on the edge of their seats. This is a pivotal moment for the character of Patrick. The demand, Patrick is tired of Omri hoarding the magic. He wants to show the tiny men to someone. He doesn't see them as people, he still sees them as toys. Patrick threatens to tell people about the magic if Omri doesn't let him help manage them. This creates a rift in their friendship. You should explain to your viewers that Omri has matured. He sees the humanity in Little Bear, while Patrick is still stuck in play mode, which makes him dangerous. A very close call happens at school, the principal's office or hallway. There is a moment where the backpack is nearly opened by an authority figure. The fear on Omri's face tells the audience that he isn't just worried about getting in trouble. He's worried about what the world would do to Little Bear if he were discovered. Patrick tries to convince Omri to bring more things to life, like modern soldiers or weapons. Omri refuses, realizing that more people means more problems. The boys get back from school, and the midpoint disaster fully sinks in. The search. Omri goes to the floorboards where he thinks the key fell. He realizes it's not just dropped, it's gone, possibly fallen through a crack in the floor. Without the key, the cupboard is useless. Little Bear is stuck in a world where he could be stepped on by a cat or die from a simple infection. The scene ends with Omri looking at his room, which used to be a playground, but now looks like a dangerous wasteland for his tiny friends. Since the magic key fell through a crack in the floor, Omri has to find a way to get it back. The dangerous mission. Omri can't fit under the floor, so he realizes he needs someone small to go down there. He asks Little Bear to go. Little Bear is a warrior, but even he is hesitant to go into a dark, cramped space filled with monsters. Household pests. To a human, a rat is a pest. To Little Bear, it's a prehistoric monster. This scene uses dark lighting and sharp sound effects to make the audience feel the terror. While Little Bear is searching for the key, a tragedy almost strikes. The injury. Little Bear manages to find the key, but he is nearly killed by the rat. He emerges exhausted and shaken. Omri sees Little Bear's fear and finally understands the moral weight of his actions. He is forcing a man to risk his life just to fix Omri's mistake. The cat, which was a minor threat earlier, becomes a primary antagonist in this sequence. The cat gets into the room while Omri is distracted. It spots the tiny movements of Boone and Little Bear. This is one of the best directed sequences in the film. The scale shifts rapidly between the cat's giant paws and the tiny men trying to find cover. Omri has to dive across the room to save them. It's a chaotic moment that shows how unsafe his bedroom actually is. Patrick, still not fully grasping the danger, comes up with a new plan that makes things worse. Bringing Boone to school. Patrick decides he wants to take Boone, the cowboy, to school to show him off, leading to a massive argument between the two boys. The ethical gap. Omri argues that they are people, not things. This is the famous line of the movie. Omri and Patrick are back in the room with the tiny men. To entertain them, Patrick has the bright idea to show them a television. Little Bear and Boone are mesmerized and terrified by the magic box. They happen to see a Western movie playing on the screen. It shows a stereotypical battle where white settlers are killing Native Americans. He sees his future, or the fate of his people, as a source of entertainment for giants. This is a very deep, somber moment that American audiences find very powerful. In the middle of the tension caused by the TV, a sudden accident occurs. Patrick and Omri get into a physical scuffle over the cupboard. During the chaos, Little Bear, influenced by the violent images on the TV and his instinct to protect his territory, shoots Boone with a tiny arrow. Boone collapses. Because he is so small, a tiny arrow is like a massive spear to his heart. Patrick is devastated, and Omri is hit with the reality that their Boone will die unless they get help. Omri realizes that Boone will die unless they get help, but they can't take him to a human hospital. Omri remembers the WWI medic, Tommy, he brought to life earlier in the film. He needs to find a specific plastic medic figurine in his messy room to bring him back to life to perform surgery. This is a race against time. Omri is digging through piles of toys while Little Bear sits by Boone's side, feeling immense guilt for what he did. Omri finds the medic and puts him in the cupboard with the key. Tommy the medic returns. The British medic is brought back to life. He is confused but immediately jumps into action when he sees a casualty. We see a 20th century medic, an 18th century Iroquois, and a 19th century cowboy all in one frame. After the intense surgery, Tommy the medic managed to stabilize Boone. The departure of Tommy. Once his job is done, Omri realizes he can't keep the medic there. Tommy is a soldier who belongs in his own time. Omri puts him back in the cupboard and turns the key, turning him back into a plastic. The sadness in Omri's eyes. He is beginning to understand that every time he uses these people, he is stealing them from their real lives. Little Bear's guilt. Little Bear stays by Boone's side as he recovers. The rivalry is officially over. They are now friends bonded by a near-death experience. This is one of the most iconic scenes for American viewers. To cement their new friendship and atone for shooting him, Little Bear decides to make Boone his blood brother. Even though they are tiny, the gravity of the ceremony feels huge. It represents the healing of historical wounds between the cowboy and the Indian. A small but vital scene happens with Omri's mom. Omri's mother talks to him about his toys. She notices he's acting differently, more mature, more somber. Omri looks at his cupboard and realizes it is a prison, not a toy. He sees that Little Bear is aging. He is lonely, and he misses his own world, his own air, and his own people. Omri makes the hardest decision a 9th birthday boy could make. He decides to send them back. The farewell process begins. Omri prepares a final giant feast for them. Little Bear gives Omri his most prized possession, a piece of his heritage, and Omri gives them things they might need back in their time. The lighting becomes soft and golden. It feels like a sunset. This is a classic goodbye trope used in movies like E.T. or The Iron Giant. The atmosphere is heavy, with the realization that this is their last night together. A warrior's wisdom. Little Bear and Omri have one final conversation. Little Bear thanks Omri for being a great spirit, but reminds him that he is just a boy, and a boy must live his own life among his own kind. Little Bear asks Omri for one last thing, to find him a wife from his own tribe. Omri almost does it. He picks up a plastic female figurine. But then he looks at Little Bear and realizes that creating a person just to be a companion is wrong. It would be like kidnapping her from her own time. Omri puts the toy back. This shows Omri's full character arc. He has moved from playing God to having total respect for human life. This is the tear-jerker scene that American audiences remember most. Patrick and Omri gather at the cupboard. Patrick says his goodbye to Boone, and Omri to Little Bear. They place the two men inside. They look like tiny kings among the plastic toys. Omri turns the key for the very last time. The sound of the lock clicking is loud and final. When he opens the door, they are just plastic toys again. Omri picks up the plastic Little Bear and holds it to his chest. He knows the spirit is gone. To make sure he is never tempted to use the magic again, Omri takes a drastic step. Omri gives the magic key back to his mother. He realizes that no one should have the power to pull people out of their own lives. His mother is surprised by his maturity. The cupboard is moved to the back of the room. It's no longer a toy, but a monument to his memory. The movie ends with a beautiful narration. Omri is in his classroom, writing an essay about his friends. As he reads his essay, he has a vision of a full-sized Little Bear in the forest, looking back at him. It suggests that Little Bear made it home safely and is living his life in the 1700s. The movie ends on a poetic note about how even though they are separated by hundreds of years, they will always be blood brothers.